One of the very first English explorers in the New World was a man named David Ingram, who had one of the most remarkable stories. In 1567, David Ingram hired on a boat with slave trader John Hopkins. They first traveled from England to Africa and successfully captured slaves, but then ran into a storm upon crossing the Atlantic to America and lost most of their rations. They ran into a skirmish at sea with the Spanish after selling the slaves to the Spanish in Mexico, which cost them even more rations. Hopkins' ship decided he did not have the supplies to carry all his crew back in England, so he left half his men in Mexico to fend for themselves and planned to return years later to retrieve them. One of the men left behind was David Ingram. David Ingram, along with many of his English crewmates, knew of English fishing ships that traveled to Newfoundland up the coast. Thus, David Ingram and others decided to march north from Tampico, Mexico to Newfoundland to hopefully catch a boat back to England. They probably didn't realize Newfoundland was 3,000 away and they had some serious walking to do. This is where things get fuzzy. What we do know for certain is that David Ingram appeared in England around 1580, 13 years later, and he arrived with 2 companions. His story, however, was questionable. Ingram claimed he and his crewmates walked 3,000 miles north in 11 months before he and his 2 surviving companions were rescued by a French ship in Nova Scotia. They paid for their passage a great pearl they picked up along their voyage. Ingram also claimed they found the fabled Northwest Passage before they set sail on the French boat. The Northwest Passage really does exist, but it is nowhere near Nova Scotia. He also said he ran into giant palaces of natives who marveled at their white skin and said the Indians were very obedient and friendly and helped them every step of the way. He quoted, "How easily they may have been governed when they be once conquered." He also said he saw giant nuggets of gold lying in the streams for the taking. Kings seated on bejeweled thrones, banquet halls with pillars of massive silver and crystal. He also saw red sheep, elephants, domestic cattle, and a horse-like beast with foot-long tusks growing from its nostrils. Obviously, there is no way all of this could be true. The account of his story was officially written when he told it to a scholar in 1582. Very little is known about David Ingram's later life. We will probably never know the true story of how David Ingram and his 2 companions returned to England. The latter 2 accounts of his companions were not recorded. It is unknown if they disputed Ingram's story or not, or maybe the story was a fanciful drunken tale they concocted up in the ship on their voyage back to England. David Ingram's story is yet another reminder that just because something was written down, doesn't mean it really happened.